Okay, so here's that render. Looks alright, right? But it didn't look like what we had up here. The reason is because our inverse intensity fall off was on. Okay, and I knew that, but I want to show you this process. Okay, which means that volumetric can't really escape the way it wants to. So what happens if you turn that off, or you bring it down, or you turn it off completely, you get this. Okay, and that volumetric is now just invading the whole scene. But if you then bring that back down, which is what I have here, you get this nice kind of glowy, soft look, which is what we want. And again, there's no anti-aliasing on yet. But what we're going to do with this light that's bleeding through, and now we've got the streaks and the reflections and everything, it's kind of coming along a little bit more like we like. So this light, and let's just move this aside. We'll try and keep that open. Close up Viper here. Okay, so that's a volumetric light. And again, I just worked with the luminosity and the opacity using Viper to help shape that light. That's all we have to do. That's one real nice thing about Viper, is that it works very, very well for the volumetrics. Okay, so there's a volumetric light just kind of coming halfway into that scene there. So let's clone that, Control C, and we're going to move that over, put it right about there. Open the light properties by pressing P, and that's rear light, that's fine. But we're going to make this one sort of a peach color. Okay. We'll save the scene. Okay. So there's our two lights. Now from here, what I want to do is start getting back into our surfaces a little bit. And we'll go to the box itself, go to Advanced, and let's put a glow on there. 100%. And of course, when we do a glow, we have to go to Windows, Image Processing, and enable the glow. And let's do about 60% and a 10 pixel radius on the glow. Okay. And then we'll press F9 to render. Okay, and now what's going to happen here is we're going to have a nice little hot streak coming up from the other side. We're going to have the orange streak coming from the right side, the volumetric. We got some light streaking through the top. We've got some purple that's kind of shining through from the backdrop itself. We've got our three colored lights in the boxes itself. And it's just a nice little environment that we can now float our logo over. And while you probably could go buy some pre-made background, it's often kind of fun to do these, because what we get to do is time it exactly like we want. We can render it at the resolution we want, and we're going to animate all these lights. But we're going to add another element too, and because we want this to be more of a feature film type thing, we're actually going to do a film strip as soon as we get these lights set. And the way we're going to do the film strip is with some transparency maps, and I've got those all mapped out for you. So let me show you those while we're rendering. If you go into your projects folder under images, if you take a look here, there is a film strip PNG. Okay, and what this is just a big film strip I made in Photoshop. Okay, just took a rounded box, cloned it, rounded box, and I made sure that the top side and the bottom side were the same size. Okay, because we're going to repeat this. And that way this will just, these sprockets on the left hand side will be repeated. Now, if this is accurate to an actual film size, couldn't even tell you. I just did it till it kind of looked okay. So, my apologies. Now, when we use this one, this black and white mask can be used for a number of things, but it's also going to be able to just clip away a piece of a polygon. But then there's a chance that we might want to use an actual image in there. So then there's this one. The white will actually create holes when it's mapped onto a polygon. The black will stay solid, and the gray will be transparent. I'll show you how that works. And finally, here's a film strip image I put in there. All right, and that's basically me in 1987 with a dog and a bone in my mouth, and I needed something to put in there. So, again, the holes will be transparent. The holes will be completely transparent. The gray will be semi-transparent. That's like a 155 gray, roughly. And this will remain solid. However, I still can fade this a little bit if I wanted by kind of washing some gray over it. Or what I'll do is put a transparency. We can take one like this with a gray value as well, and this image mapped on top of it will be somewhat not luminous, but translucent. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. We also have our time-lapse footage, which you could map on there. Okay, but that doesn't quite match up simply just because, well, you'd want a frame and then a frame, and then a frame, and a frame, and a frame. So what you could do, if you have QuickTime Pro or some other things, you could actually take a footage clip like this and export it out as a sequence. And then you could load that sequence and place it on the film strip. However, the problem with that, when you got a film strip like this, you need then to take every, if you wanted to actually have every frame on there, you have to surface every frame. You have to make multiple copies of this and surface every frame. But there's a little trick around that, and just by simply naming this polygon and mapping that on there and moving it and making sure you have enough of it, enough of the polygon to show, you can actually get the effect that the clip is moving on there. Okay, so just by simply mapping it on. But if you've ever worked with film, you'll know that 24 frames a second for film, we gotta have 24 of those going by just to see 1 second. And 1 second of motion in a normal movie, you're not going to see a whole lot. So all we're going to do in this particular case is just keep the same image mapped on as we move it by, because you're not going to see a ton of those moving. All right, so all right, I'm going to let this render, and I'll show you what it looks like in the next video.